What I like to start off with is just some kind of wins, or if anybody wants to share their numbers. This is really, really critical. I think sharing numbers, especially if your numbers were high, because there's gonna be a lot of like understanding from that, and then we'll just kind of move forward from there.
Well, for me, I'm just getting, I just got my meter today. So then starting tomorrow for the next 5 days, I'll take my numbers.
Okay. Did you take any numbers at all, Kim, yet?
No, because I just literally got everything this afternoon.
Okay, great.
For me, I wake up and it's between 114 and 147. And then at the end of the day, before bed, it's 182 to 150
Okay, who's
for
speaking?
5 days.
Who is this?
Sharon.
Sharon, okay. So so from the information that you've learned so far, Sharon, what's your thoughts on that?
That I am diabetic.
Okay. Were you diagnosed with diabetes or
No.
Okay. All right. So what were your numbers here again? Let me just write this down.
The first day was 114, and then it went up as high as 147 4 days later.
Okay.
Today was 128. So that's when I wake up.
Okay. And then did you say you had a reading in the 180s, or is your highest 147?
No, my highest at night is 190.
190. Ah, okay. Gotcha. All right. All right. So one of the things, man, I'm sorry, I got something in my throat now. Is one of the things is when you talk about are you diabetic, and if you would run your labs and stuff like that, my gut feel is that you might show that you're pre-diabetic, but not diabetes. This is the thing. Yeah, and you'd only know that by actually verifying through labs. But this is the thing, when you look at this glycemic pattern, is that you can have this high glucose pattern of 190, and then it dropped down to 110 or 114. And every time that you do this, you have these big sugar spikes. This causes like more systemic inflammation in your body. So if you have whatever your problem is, if you have brain fog, brain fatigue, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, fibromyalgia, IBS, whatever it is, whenever you have these glucose spikes, that's going to accentuate, bring out the weak links in your body. So right now, these numbers tell me that like there's a major glucose problem.
Right.
And that's probably, I don't know how many doctors you've gone to see, but you're not going to get better until this is like managed and handled.
Agreed.
And I don't know what that is, right? There's so many different possibilities that can be. So just for people that might have not caught that. So her numbers were 114 to 190 in that range. And what we really want to see is between 85 and 120 with or without food. That's ideal, with or without food. Now, if you're not getting any numbers below 100, that's a problem as well.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. They're all over 100.
Yeah, they're all over 100. That's a problem. Now, some people might have numbers, for example, like let's say 115, 120, maybe you eat some food, it goes up to 130. But if you don't see any numbers below 100, that's significant problem for some kind of sugar, blood sugar dysregulation.
Right.
And Alzheimer's disease, just so you know, I don't know if anyone's heard this, but Alzheimer's disease is nicknamed type 3 diabetes. Has anyone heard that before?
No.
Yep, yeah. I have.
Okay, Amy has. Because here's what the research shows is like when you have high glucose levels, Alzheimer's grows in a body. And not only Alzheimer's, but every neurological disease on planet Earth grows in a body that has high glucose levels. It just happens to be there's a lot more money put into Alzheimer's disease versus Parkinson's disease or ALS. Anybody else do some numbers that they want to share?
I've got some numbers.
Okay. And
This
who's
is
speaking?
Maria. This is Maria.
Maria. Okay, Maria.
Mine are typically in the 90s when I wake up. There was one dinner where I knew it was going to be bad.
Uh-huh.
And it got to 193,
Ah, shit. Okay, that's bad.
but then went down to like 119, 151, and it was 101 by the time I went to bed. But I knew that dinner was going to be bad.
All right. What was it?
It was soup, but it had lots of noodles in it. And I
Okay.
felt like crap that night.
Okay.
But most of the time it's close to the 120 mark. I go over a little bit, like 137, 124, 139.
Okay. So one of the things that can happen too, just to give you more clinical information on this, is someone that has like good glucose control. If I were to eat that meal, my blood sugar wouldn't jump up to 193.
Mm,
So like someone that has good glucose control levels, you can eat like a shitty meal, like a bunch of carbs, and mine might get like maybe 130, 140 because I have like my cells are very sensitive to insulin. So that's another indicator. If you eat a really bad meal, quote, bad meal, and your sugar jumps up high, that tells you that there's still some form of glucose dysregulation, glucose insensitivity, insulin insensitivity, some kind of inflammation going on.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. We have four people. Anyone else have any numbers?
I can share just a little bit. I have just a tiny bit of data. This is Amy.
Uh-huh. Hi, Amy.
I've checked in the 4 mornings, and they've been like 98 or 99, except this morning it was 112. And then I have yesterday I checked after I ate,
Uh-huh.
and it was like 106 to 108, like at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and then
Okay.
120 minutes.
Okay.
And then tonight I checked just before I ate dinner, which I finished like literally right at 6,
Mm-hmm.
and it was 124 before dinner.
Okay. So there's some problem there. Yeah. So you have something's going on. You're going to need to get more data.
Yeah.
Just kind of refine it, right? But at least
Yep.
this one thing with this protocol is it's fairly inexpensive to do. I think you can buy like 100 slides for like $30. And once you get into a routine, you don't have to do this. You don't have to prick your finger this often. You're going to know, and then you can monitor to make sure that these levels kind of go down. Now, one thing I do want to say about the morning glucose levels, I'm not a huge fan of morning glucose levels, so I don't put a lot of stock into that. Like let's say your morning glucose is like 105, right? If it pushes over 110, then I would be concerned about it. But sometimes people can have, increased morning glucose because if you're waking up, sometimes if you don't have enough glucose, your adrenal glands will start to produce norepinephrine and epinephrine, and that will start to increase your glucose in your blood supply. So I do have a little forgiveness on the morning blood sugar, but you do want to see readings in the 90s throughout the whole entire day. So that was good. Thanks for sharing that. And
That's a question for last time. So you had mentioned about, before you go to bed, have like walnuts or
Mhm.
half an avocado or something like that. I don't really want to prick my fingers again for having a snack before I go to bed.
that's fine. You don't have to. I mean, that snack thing there was for people that were waking up in the middle of the night, that they might be falling in a state of hypoglycemia.
Yeah, and I do wake up in the middle of the night. So I did try it. I tried it before I got my meter, and
Okay.
it might have helped, but I didn't do it for too many nights.
Okay. So some of this stuff is retraining and being consistent before you can, and it's not like it. One thing with any kind of healing, there's not one holy grail. Like this is like when I actually work with people on one-on-one, it's a polytherapy approach. I might do 10 different things small minor things, but that's enough to move the whole, to move the healing needle to more healing than disease. Any questions on the material from last week? Okay, so let's rock and roll. So I have to be off this call at 6:50. I have another call at 7 that I have to get on. So let's move into this week's material, which is going to be like leaky gut. I want to handle that because that's a huge thing with inflammation. Then I'm just going to kind of go over the different like regimens. I don't like to call them diets. I should put lifestyles. I like to just call it more of like a lifestyle. So what kind of lifestyle are you going to do? So if you have problems right now, regardless if you have sugar problem, sugar dysregulation or not, like you need to make some kind of dietary change because there's always dietary involvement with a chronic condition that you have, even if you may have fairly stable blood sugar. So the first thing I want to go over is the leaky gut. So you're going to want to watch this video for sure on leaky gut and how leaky gut causes chronic inflammation. But what I want to go over is really go over the pictures because I know I just like pictures and I think they explain a lot of things. Now, one thing, can you see my red arrow here? You see where I have proteins not breaking down? Do you see that? Can people see that? Okay, so when we look at proteins, it's hard for me to see because I'm not on my screen anywhere. So when we look at proteins, you have proteins that have to be broken down into polypeptides and then amino acids. So it's proteins, polypeptides, and amino acids. Now, what happens is if you eat food and you get bloating, gas, diarrhea, or if you have some kind of pain or something like that, you probably have some kind of leaky gut and you're not breaking down your proteins fully and they're going into your bloodstream as long molecules that are called polypeptides. So when this occurs, when these big molecules get into your bloodstream, they shouldn't be there. And this is when your immune system recognizes this protein because it's really large, it's foreign. And this is when your immune system is going to start to attack that protein. So for example, I'm just going to use an example as gluten because most people have some kind of sensitivity to gluten. So gluten's not broken down all the way. You have a leaky gut, it gets into your bloodstream. And because it's large, that's going to cause an inflammatory response. And then what happens is your immune system will take a picture of gluten so it knows what it looks like, and it produces antibodies. Just like, if someone gets the flu, you're producing antibodies against the flu, or if you've had COVID-19, you've produced antibodies against what that looks like. Now, this is the same thing that happens in your gut, is when you have these proteins that you're sensitive to, they get in your immune system takes a picture of it, and this causes inflammation because it's not supposed to be there. Now, there's a term called molecular mimicry, which means this is when your immune system takes a picture of, let's say, like gluten. It takes a picture of gluten and it knows it shouldn't be in your bloodstream because it's so big, but gluten will look like your thyroid. So if gluten looks like your thyroid and your body starts to produce antibodies against gluten, what do you think is going to happen to your thyroid? It's going to be attacked. This is what we call autoimmune disease. So this is how autoimmune diseases start, is through a leaky gut. You have to have a leaky gut before you get an autoimmune disease. And this is the whole process of that. When we just talk about our gut, when God designed us, our gut, let me just show you some pictures here. So you can see this picture is blowing up here, right? There's two pictures. Okay, so the one on the left here, and I just want to make sure the one on my left is the one that's red. Is that what you're seeing on yours, on your left?
Yes.
Okay, so the one so this is your gut. Okay, so you can see up here where all these, it says gluten, it says microorganisms up here. Okay, that would be your food. Now, when you look at how significant your gut is, 90% of your immune system is in your small intestine. So let me say that again, 90% of your immune system is in your gut. So if you have a bad gut, you're going to have problems, period. That's how it works. Now, the gut barrier is one cell thick. So this is pretty incredible. From the outside to the inside, it's one cell thick. That's it. So it's not a very good barrier. Now, if you look over here on the right, this is a picture of your skin. Now, we've all cut our finger, and in order for us to actually get down to the blood down here, we have to go through thousands of skin cells. So your skin is a very, very solid barrier where your gut barrier isn't. And now when we look at all the foods that we're sensitive to and all the chemicals and the fluoride and the chloride and all these things, that makes the gut very, very susceptible. And this is a weak link for a lot of people. So when you have this leaky gut in here, these big particles get in your bloodstream, and this is when this immune system can start to happen. Now, what the research shows is this is really critical, is 50% of the people that have leaky gut have no GI symptoms. So let me say that again. 50% of people that have leaky gut do not have any GI symptoms. So you can't correlate, oh, I have great GI system, I don't have any gas, I don't have any bloating. You know, I go to the bathroom on a regular basis. You can't rule out your gut as being bad based on symptoms. But in my experience, most people that have significant problems are going to have significant gut problems as well. So that's that with the leaky gut. Now, one of the things I kind of want to show you here, I'm going to blow this picture up here. Can you see, I don't know, Sherry, if you can see this on your screen right here, you see where it says saliva layer? Can people see that? You might have to look really close.
Yes.
So, okay, great.
Yeah.
So you see that? Okay, great. So this right here, just imagine what happens is within your gut, which is 90% of your immune system is there, there's a saliva layer that's there. So just like your tongue, you need saliva, and that's used as a protective mechanism. Now, what happens is when you start to get leaky gut and you're not eating properly and you become sensitive to all these different foods, is this leaky gut, okay, I'm going to blow this up. You see this leaky gut, or excuse me, you see the mucus there, it's gone. See how it's gone. Then what happens is all these little speckles there, I'm not sure if you can see that, get into your bloodstream, and then your immune system starts to flare up. And this is where you have all these reactions to different foods. Now, one of the things that can happen is, let's say you go on like an elimination diet, which I'll be going over next. And let's say you go gluten-free. I'm just going to stick on this gluten-free thing. So let's say you go gluten-free for 5 weeks or 4 weeks. What happens is then your immune system, because you haven't had any gluten exposure, your immune system has had time to rebuild. Just like, imagine like a military that's been beaten down, and then they have a 6-week reprieve or 4-week reprieve where they can rebuild their supplies. This is the same thing that happens in your gut. Now, if you go gluten-free or whatever that is, and then let's say you eat gluten, 5 weeks later, you could have severe reaction. You could have diarrhea for a week. You could have major flare-ups. You could have a major flare. And the reason is because your immune system has had time to rebuild its reserves, its response to these big proteins. And then when it sees it, it's going to be a massive reaction. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is why a lot of people they'll clean up their diet, they'll feel great, and then all of a sudden they'll say, "Oh, I can have this cake," and then they have a big explosion or a big flare because their immune system is starting to build up again, and it can attack those proteins. So in here, I used to do a lot of food sensitivity testing. I don't do that anymore because everyone's food sensitivity, you should just do elimination diet. But can you see these graphs right here, these bars? So this would be a reaction. This is an IgG, which is part of your immune system. So this person is telling you that they're very sensitive to a bunch of dairy and eggs and those kind of things. Now, one thing I do like about this test is that if you have a lot of food sensitivities, it will tell you, what kind of condition your gut's in. If you have a really good gut, if your gut's bad. So the more food sensitivities you have, the worse your gut is actually in. Okay, so what we're really trying to do here is getting back to these proteins, polypeptides, and amino acids, is before these polypeptides, they need to be broken down into amino acids, then absorbed in your gut. And this is where we're going to start to get more healing. Now, next week, I think it's next week, I'm going to go over, no, I think it's the 4th week, I'm going to go over very specific gut protocols to kind of restore the gut. But before we do that, I just want to kind of go over the different lifestyles that you can implement to get your gut starting to heal. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go over 3 different options here. So the very basic one is just going gluten-free and then dairy-free. Now, I think for most people on here, I suggest that you actually start with this paleo regimen. So I don't have any details or webinars on gluten-free, dairy-free on my website, but I think that would be, if you really want to start healing the needle, you want to do the paleo or the autoimmune paleo. So that's what I have on my website. So if you just want to try gluten-free, dairy-free, just go online and get some information on that. But let me go over the paleo and then the autoimmune paleo. So a couple of things here is what we're trying to do here is with, let me just go over this here with the, I'm going to blow up this right here. So you can see the paleo, and then you can see the AIP, the autoimmune. The AIP stands for autoimmune. Now, if people are in really bad conditions metabolically, so if you have like autoimmune disease, if you have brain fog, so there's a spectrum, right? So the spectrum is like, how bad is someone metabolically? Like, how many problems do they have? Really indicates to me like how aggressive you have to go on the program, right? So if someone's just like trying to lose weight, then I would tell you, well, maybe you're fine just going gluten-free and dairy-free and then doing some intermittent fasting. If someone has like fibromyalgia, brain fog, more severe conditions, then you need to do the AIP, the autoimmune paleo. Now, the autoimmune paleo, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to eliminate the most sensitive or reactive foods that people are sensitive to. So if you go back to this page right here, and then if you just click this right here, click here to download the AIP, which AIP stands for Autoimmune Paleo. This is not my PDF, so I want to give credit to this gal right here, Dr. Sarah. But you would want to read this, and it tells you the reasons why you want to do the autoimmune paleo. So this right here is the most restrictive diet. And I tell people you don't have to stay on this forever. I say, well, you should probably do this for 6 weeks and see what kind of change you get. And then you would start to add one thing back in at a time. Basically, it's this. The autoimmune paleo is meat and vegetables. That's pretty much it. You're eliminating all the most highly sensitive foods that you have on the autoimmune paleo. And this is a really great diagram. And I added a couple slides. Let me go back to this slide right here. Okay, so when we talk about, you can see the paleo template and then the AIP, you can see that graph right there. So some of the biggest things that I have found with clients is when they do the AIP, they might have done the paleo, but you're still eating nuts, because nuts and like cashews, almonds are acceptable on the paleo diet, but the almonds have lectins in them, which people are very, very sensitive. So if I've had people just do the autoimmune paleo and their autoimmune condition totally went away because they were eating almonds that had lectins, and they were eating nightshades, which are both very sensitive, but are allowed on the paleo regimen. So let me just go back to this handout right here. Okay, so here I'm going to blow this up if I can. Maybe I can't. So this is lectins. So a lot of people have autoimmune disease against lectins, which are found in almonds, cashews, sunflower, beans, chickpeas. And this can cause a whole autoimmune and inflammatory reaction. So you eliminate that, and then you also eliminate nightshades. So let me go down and give you a visual. All these are nightshades, which people can be sensitive to. So you have to figure out for yourself, like, how bad of a condition are you in, right? Do you need to go autoimmune paleo? Can you just try paleo? So that's something that you have to determine. But then once you just get into the lifestyle, then it's pretty like simple to do. Okay, then here, what I want to go over here is, anyone try to do intermittent fasting? No, okay. So let me go to intermittent fasting. Now, there's a couple caveats I want to go over when it comes to intermittent fasting. I don't think intermittent fasting is for everybody. And then here's who I don't recommend intermittent fasting for. Fragile people that if you don't have any extra weight to lose, you do not want to do intermittent fasting. So let's say you still have a lot of metabolic problems and you have a lot of things going on. Intermittent fasting is not the solution for you. These people generally need to eat more often and eat small meals often, but still be on an autoimmune paleo program. So I do not recommend intermittent fasting for someone that's in a state of hypoglycemia. That's a no-no. I also don't recommend it if you take your blood pressure and you have or if you have low blood pressure. That's another thing. So there's three things that I don't want intermittent fasting. If you have hypoglycemia, if you're frail and you have you're very thin, and if you have low blood pressure, you do not want to do intermittent fasting in these cases. You want to make sure that you have enough glucose supply throughout the whole entire day, especially if you have too much sugar or your sugar levels are high and then your sugar levels are low. Now, this is a really great graphic. Can you see here on the left here? Can you see this? It says blood insulin. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right. And then you can see carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So you could just substitute, instead of insulin here, you could just put glucose. Same thing. So what happens here is when you eat a glucose meal, so if someone had like this soup, right, with a bunch of noodles, that has a bunch of carbohydrates on it, so your glucose goes up and then you drop down. This is when a lot of disease happens over a period of time. So we're talking like decades, right? People eat this way for decades. They think low fat's good, especially like in the 80s, right? I grew up in the 80s. Everything was low fat, Snackwell cookies, but you take away the fat and you put what in there? You put sugar in there. So when you talk about decades of this high sugar insulin levels, then you crash and you come up. This causes a lot of stress on just your whole metabolic system. And then we have proteins here, which still causes insulin and sugars to go up. And then we have fats, right? So then we have fats down here. You can see how it's a nice, it doesn't really affect your blood sugar and insulin levels. Now, I do want to say a couple of things about ketogenic diets, and I do recommend ketogenic diets for people. Because what the research shows and clinically is the most easiest fuel source for your cells to use are actually fats or fatty, basically fats. MCT oils, they're very easy for you to use. So if you have carbohydrates and you have fats, carbohydrates are more difficult to use, where fats for a fuel source are very, very easy and very, very, very efficient. So for example, if someone comes to me and they have, they're really bad off, I would suggest that they do a ketogenic diet because sometimes people's blood sugar levels and their insulin levels are so messed up that they need to switch over to a ketogenic diet for a short period of time until they start cleaning up their systems. So let me just kind of go over this here. Here's another great graph.
So you would recommend just doing keto for a shorter period of time? And
yeah,
then look at the paleo for a lifestyle?
Right. And it all depends on how bad metabolically you are. I would start with the autoimmune paleo and then go from there. You're going to have to some of this stuff is trial and error and see if it works and see if you can manage it. So some things that happens here, if you see this green spikes here, so what happens is anytime you eat glucose or carbs, this is spiking your insulin level. So this is what we're doing when we do, for example, 18-6. So you eat at noon and then you eat at 6. So if you're not severely, if your goal is to do more like hormonal balance, trying to lose weight, then intermittent fasting. When I say intermittent fasting, I'm really talking about eating at noon and eating at 6, an 8-16 schedule. Now, what happens if you eat at noon and 6, if you only eat 2 meals a day, then you're not spiking your insulin and glucose levels. And just remember, anytime anytime your glucose levels go up, automatically your insulin levels go up. They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So when your glucose levels go up, your insulin levels go up, and insulin is a pro-inflammatory hormone. So really what we're really doing is when we measure glucose, we're also measuring your insulin levels. Now, some things, when people have more metabolic resilience, and this is what you catch on labs, sometimes people's glucose levels are normal, right? But their fasting insulin is really high. So that tells you that this person metabolically is okay, that it's, let me say when I say okay, that this person's body is spitting out enough insulin to keep the glucose lower. But eventually what's going to happen, you're going to keep on spitting insulin, and then your glucose levels continue to go up and up and up. So really what you're doing is when you do intermittent fasting, you're really giving your cells, all your cells, you're literally a spirit and a cellular being, you're giving your cells a break from the insulin surges and those cells being bathed in insulin. So really simple schedule would be 18-6. You're fasting for 18 hours and you have a window of 6 hours to eat. So for example, what does something like this look like? So for me, I get up and I'll drink my coffee. I don't consider coffee to be like a cheat. So then, no, you talk to some peers and they would consider that. But there's some things I really like and I'm not willing to give up my coffee. So I'll drink my coffee in the morning, and then I'll eat at noon, and then I'll eat at 6. And then, I'm trying to be pretty consistent about an 18-6 schedule when it comes to fasting. But this is what we're really trying to do when we talk about intermittent fasting. We're trying to decrease the insulin levels, which is going to decrease your glucose levels, versus this graph. You can see here 16 hours of fasting, right? So this is being 18-6. So 16 hours of fasting, and then you have a eight-hour window. And this shows that you're eating lunch and dinner, then you're having a couple snacks. But the takeaway that you want to get is when you do fasting, you're decreasing your inflammation, you're decreasing your insulin levels, and then this gives your cells time to start to use kind of all the junk that it's built up into the cell. So what happens is when we have so much insulin floating around in the cell can never actually utilize all the little debris in the cell. So it actually starts to build up inside there and causes that cell not to function very well. So by intermittent fasting, you're actually detoxifying your cells, because your cells actually will start to eat the debris in the cells that it never had to do because it's always been bathed with food. This is where intermittent fasting is very, very powerful, and you can start to clean out some of the junk and the debris that's in the cell to start the healing process. Any questions with intermittent fasting? Okay. Now here, I kind of want to show you this because this is a cool little lab, and this is one of my clients in 2016. But this would be a fasting insulin level. And we actually took her fasting insulin level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And initially it was 23. And then the second time, so 23 was really high. We want that to be between 5 and 6 functionally. And then you can see what we did. We worked on diet and a bunch of other different things, but you can see how it started to level off. And functionally, you want this between 5 and 7 is a good sweet spot. So there's really a lot of power in knowing some of these labs, because then you can judge what's happening. And okay, so this is a great video on that. How many people here have tried to go gluten-free?
I have.
1, 2. Okay, Amy, no?
I have.
Okay, all right. So a lot of people have gone gluten-free. Now, when you went gluten-free, what kind of foods were you eating?
I ate a lot of salads, and like for breakfast, I would have chia seed and flaxseed, apple, cinnamon, and things like that,
Okay, good.
and some nuts.
Okay, great. Let me kind of go over this because I think there's a lot of confusion on gluten-free. I hate gluten-free fads. Gluten-free fads are so dangerous, and let me explain why. So here's a great video. I kind of walk through Whole Foods and go through some different products that are gluten-free. Now, if you go in and you're getting substitutes for gluten, and this is a good diagram right in, let me see here. Let me go back to the notes. Let me blow up my computer. Can people see this graph right here where it has rice right there? You see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a very, very important graph. And this will put a lot of like visual understanding of what's happening. So when a lot of people, okay, it's gluten-free, so they'll do a lot of processed gluten-free products. That's been kind of the fad. So this is what I'm kind of going after. Now, what this is this is the glycemic index. So what the glycemic index is it tells you how quickly sugar gets in your bloodstream and spikes glucose and spikes insulin. So the level is based on 100. So let me just say that again. So this is a graph. It's a measurement on how quickly something that you eat will spike your glucose. And if it spikes your glucose, it automatically spikes your insulin. It goes hand in hand. So you can see this graph right here. So this is rice. So out of 100, rice has a glycemic index of 95. So if you go to these packages and it says gluten-free, but it's substituted it instead of wheat, it's got rice flour in there. Can you see how that would be a very deadly product? Because that's, yes, because that's spiking your glucose, it's spiking your insulin, causing inflammation. This is why people go gluten-free diets and they buy a bunch of packaged food that's all gluten-free that costs twice as much, but yet they're in worse condition and they gain weight and they're more inflamed. Because of this, because of what they're substituting it with. So this is why if you get back to an autoimmune paleo, a paleo, you eliminate all this stuff. So this is the glycemic index. So tapioca pudding, there's a lot of tapioca and gluten-free products. You can see right over here on the right, this is wheat bread is 74 out of 100. Now I'm going to show you this picture right in here. So you can see eggs has a glycemic index. Who can see what's the glycemic index of eggs? 1. 1. So why is that? Let's go back to the graph. If I can find it. Hang on a second. Maybe. Let's go back to this graph right here. Eggs is all what? Fat and protein. So when we really look at these diets, I don't know, lifestyles, is we're actually changing metabolically the hormones. Insulin's a hormone in your body, and we're changing that. Same thing with avocado is 1. Banana is 54 and orange juice is 38. Now, another great picture here is a Snickers bar. A Snickers bar has a glycemic index of, I think it's like 40. Now, why would a Snickers bar only have a glycemic index of 40?
It's protein.
That's protein, right? So you just can't go by the glycemic index. I'm gonna eat Snickers. Like I would like to do that every day of my life. So you have to look at that. This is one component of the whole process of the whole picture is you're looking at these and you're trying to get low glycemic index foods that are healthy. And to be honest with you, the autoimmune paleo is automatically going to put you in that category. Okay, and then here, if you go to this, right here, if you click this, if you have to have an Instagram account, but I have a lot of cool, one, like there are 150-second video or a minute and a half videos on a bunch of different stuff here. So if you have any interest in roaming through some videos or some content right here, there's a lot of really quick little gems that you can pick up under a minute and a half. Okay, that's week number 2. Does anyone have any questions about anything before we sign off?
I do. I've been AIP for a year and a half to 2 years and trying to get the inflammation down. And based on the numbers are so high for my glucose, I was trying to decide if I was looking at diabetic diets and trying to decide, do I stay AIP or do I move to diabetic? But you're saying keto. And so my main question is, nuts was, allowed on keto, but not on AIP. So what do I throw out and what do I embrace?
Is it Sharon?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is a good question. So here we have a case where you've been AIP, right?
I
You
have.
said? Okay, and that's
Yeah,
really, really restrictive.
Yes,
So, and your glucose are still high,
exactly.
right? So this is telling you that metabolically there's been a lot of damage there. So then, yeah, I mean, the next thing I would try and do is increase fats for sure. And maybe you want to try, I mean, I don't know your whole history. So, you could also get people that are like in your condition, I'll have them get a keto mojo meter, which checks for ketones. So like you're in the next realm, right? But even before I would do that, I mean, this is me, this is how I work, is before I tell someone they need to do ketogenic, I mean, I'm checking a whole bunch of other things like, what's your vitamin D level? What's your inflammatory markers in your body? Do you have enough hydrochloric acid? Do you have any digestive enzymes? Do you have any kind of bugs in your body? Do you have any viruses? Right. So these are like the underlying things that can be causing something, that you have an underlying inflammatory process happening. And if you're always in a state of inflammation, those cells just cannot be receptive to insulin and glucose levels. So I would suggest that you try and do add some more fats. And if you go onto my website, there's a really cool recipe here. If in the search bar, if you just put keto.
Okay.
And I make this for my son. I make it too. There's this one. So there's like this keto fat bomb recipe.
Yep,
And there's
we make
also,
those.
no, you make those. Okay. Then here,
Yep.
And then this right here, this is like a keto smoothie shake. That's a really quick video. Let me go into. So here, this is really good. And people on this call here, this right here, I like this, that, I'll put get this coconut cream there, the actual in the can.
Right.
And I'll put
Use
this
that.
in the Vitamix. I'll put like collagen in there. I drink dairy. We have a farm by us, so I get raw dairy. I'll put my fish oil in there. So you could watch that. That could be something where you could easily get more fats into your diet. But you definitely need more fats. That's clearly a problem for you. Whatever kind of condition you have, your glucose is a major problem. And the thing what you want to really take away is that now, like, this is a problem. No one checked it. I'm assuming no doctor ever ran this protocol on you, right?
Nope.
Right. So this is quite significant. Like, it's not a small thing. I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah. Yep. I caught that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Someone put in the chat here. Barb, will this heal my mitochondria from damage of Cipro? I mean, it could. I mean, so the question was, can this help problems from damaged mitochondria from Cipro? It can, for sure. I mean, again, it's not one bullet, especially when you talk about people that have been damaged by antibiotics. you're going to have to do 10 different things, especially if your case is bad. If you have a lot of damage there, the diet alone is not going to solve the problem. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It may, in my experience, it won't. That's just my feel. That's just my experience, I guess, clinically.
That's where I am. I've been floxed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I'm getting on a conference call right or soon here at 7. You know, I'm trying stuff all the time. Like methylene blue is some new product that just came on the market that helps mitochondria. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to repair cells. At the end of the day, what I'm really good at is I kind of got pigeon-toed into this 𝗤𝗵𝗲𝗁 kind of thing. I'm just a really, really good guide at restoring God-given physiology in people's bodies. And I can know where weaknesses are. And once you start to restore those weaknesses, that healing power in your body can start to heal itself. That's where my skill set is at this point.
So Dr. Wigworth, you're saying that you probably need a lot of testing done to see what you're lacking in your body.
I don't try and do a lot of testing. I mean, I do blood work. I do extensive blood work for sure. And then, you know, it'll be like 9 vials of blood. There's a lot of blood work. And then from there, then if people have had mold exposure or heavy metal exposure or toxic environmental pollutants, you know, there's some urine things that can be done. I don't run. Labs are critical, and in difficult cases, I run labs, but I don't think I run huge amounts of labs. No, I don't think so. And labs are just a fishing net. I tell all my clients, there's never been a lab that has gotten someone better. There's never been a lab that's gotten anyone better. None of my patients have ever gotten better on a lab. What they've gotten better on is an exact specific protocol that restores some kind of function to that person's body. It's either they are toxic or they're deficient. And labs is just a fishing net. You throw it out there, you reel it in, and you figure out what you got, and it kind of helps guide you to that path.
Thank you.
You can see where you've been and see where you're going, or see where, your results and how good they're getting.
It can be, yeah, for sure. So for example, here, let me just show you I've had some really cool things happen here. Here we go. So this is a lady who's like 80. She was damaged by bad antibiotics and just a bunch of crazy stuff. But this is insane. I mean, I just was on a phone call with them today, and they're in California. So this is an inflammatory marker here, which is, it doesn't tell you where it's at. It just tells you it's inflamed. Can people see this? It's freaking 224. We want this, ideally, I want to see this less than 1. So hers is 224. And this was taken August 9th of last year. And 4 months later, it's down to 4. Wow. I mean, this is like insane. Like, these are the things, this is inflammation, right? I mean, she's a super nice lady. They're married. They're in their 80s. They spent $30,000 on all the shiny coin stuff. And this right here, what we're going over right here, is not shiny coin. It's basic principle 101 that has 20 plus years of diving into physiology to figure things out. You know, so that's a weakness, right? So here, let me just show you a couple of things here. So the labs can just kind of guide you. So this lady, let's see what I have. This lady was housebound. So you can see her vitamin D is 6.3. Like, these are just like, so like, why is it 6.3? Why didn't any provider check that and get that figured out? That's like ridiculous. Her CRP was 12. There's inflamed, right? So these are the things that are just completely missed. Here's a good one. Here's her fasting insulin, 41. Ideally, you want that to be 5. So just with these little pieces of marker, just these little 3 pieces of information, like, I know, like, there's tons of stuff happening right there. You're not going to get better in a body that has these 3 things going on. No doubt. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So I like this. It was really enjoyable. It's the second time now. I'm just trying to get used to the format and going through this. And the good news is I brushed my teeth before I did this, so I had fresh breath. Okay, so we'll see y'all next week. The recording will be up. So really, what you want to do, the homework this week, the homework is get your blood markers in, monitor that. Next week, be ready to share because we're going to have more data on that. And then I don't know if has anyone done the blood pressure cuff? Has anyone tried that protocol?
I did.
Share. Okay, who and what?
Mine was good.
Okay.
But then I've been trying to eat healthier. So, you know, I don't know. I guess if I eat sorry, then
Yeah.
I eat
Sharon,
shitty.
Yeah, that will throw off. Sharon, did you do this?
No, I did not.
Okay, you need to do that
Okay.
because I'm almost certain it's going to be low.
No, I'm usually, when the doctor checks me, I'm usually high.
Okay, could be. All right. So some of that with that could be that you have white coat syndrome too. I notice a lot of people go in, it's high,
Yeah.
but when they start taking it home, it's low. But
Yeah.
maybe not.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.